president says his administration will leave no stone unturned in penalizing who will be violators of the beautiful game in the country. Mr. Raji said his administration he said that football administrators rather, as well as players and referees in Liberia who are found guilty of breaching the game rules will be severely punished. Speaking to reporters recently in Monrovia, Mr. Raji said his administration will work with the Confederation of African Football, CAF, and FIFA to clean the mess in Liberian football. On to basketball now. Reports reaching our sports department say some basketball stakeholders in the country have expressed disappointment in the leadership of the Liberia Basketball Association. They said their disappointment in the leadership is due to the failure of the Liberia Basketball Association to prepare for the 2018-2019 National League season at the Sports Commission. A member of the group, Philip Auckland, said they are continuous silence by the officials of the Liberia Basketball Association is a clear signal that they have no interest in the game of basketball for Liberians. He said they will complain the Liberia Basketball Association to the Ministry of Youth and Sports. He said since Oilers won the competition 1 year ago, basketball has gone to bed, adding, "We will push for it to wake up." Our reporter who visited the Sports Commission weeks ago saw no sign of any preparation by the Liberia Basketball Association leadership to commence the National League. Away from home very briefly, second seed Rafael Nadal is into the final of the Australian Open Tennis Championships. The 32-year-old beat Stefanos of Greece 6-2, 6-4, 6-0 on Wednesday night. He awaits the winner between Novak Djokovic and Lukas Podolski, who are to play this Friday for the final, which is expected to be held on Sunday. And Spanish football giant Real Madrid has topped the table of the world's 20 richest football clubs, displacing Manchester United. According to a London-based business magazine, Deloitte, Real is valued in revenue around $665.2 million, while United is at $590 million. According to the magazine, Real Madrid has the highest commercial revenue of any football club globally, contributing to those world record revenues. FC Barcelona, according to the magazine, is in the second position with $601.6 million. Some other clubs are Manchester City, Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, PSG, among others. And Tiger Woods has begun his 2019 golf season on a good note. The former golf champion was in action yesterday at the Farmers Insurance Open Golf competition in the United States. The BBC says the 43-year-old said he was glad to be back on the court. And Leggy, that's it for the sports.
Thank you, Mike. Mike, but before you go, let me ask you, when is the national team traveling to Morocco to begin their training session for that crucial qualifier against DR Congo?
According to the Liberia Football Association, they are putting into place all of the necessary instruments to ensure that the team leaves as early as possible. We were told that they will be going to Morocco for a training session, and then they will fly from Morocco to DR Congo for that crunch match against DRC.
Did the LFA announce it?
The question was when.
When?
no, we don't know.
No.
According to them, they are still putting together bits and pieces, and so
that is the answer.
So we cannot say as to when they will leave.
Okay, but did the LFA tell you that they announced a mobilization committee for the Lone Star?
No.
I got a letter yesterday appointing me as a member of the Lone Star Mobilization Committee. So I hope they will do that press release and put it out so we know who's the chairperson and other members of the committee.
Because Danishas Mater is the public relations officer of the LFA. So we hope that the LFA through him can release that information to the public as soon as possible.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much.
A pleasure.
You've done yourself a good job this morning. Happy New Year to you and happy belated birthday. You didn't tell me, I saw it on social media, but well, it's your right not to do so.
Thank you.
But So the man a politician?
Transitioning.
Oh, the man transitioning to political. Well, we'll wait and see
how it plays out.
How it all pans out. That's the Super Morning Show right here on ELBC Radio. When we come back, we'll begin our discussion with our studio guest this morning on the Morning Show. Your radio just got better listening to ELBC. And it's George Daco. We used to call this one Fodo, but it's actually Accord de Profo. Anytime I play this song, I remember, brings back memory, let me say, of the Grand Raffle draw for the Fodo LBS. Madam Olivia Shannon, good morning to you. DG Emeritus. Also to you, Prof. Alaji GV Chroma, and all other DGs of LBS. If you're listening, good morning to you. ELBC Radio, the voice for the promotion of the proper agenda for prosperity and development.
Hey, what's up, man? You seem to be rushing in.
Russian. Listening to ELBC. Great music, gentlemen. Good morning to you, and thanks for coming here. You're taking off time, your busy schedule to be here this morning with me. It's 9 o'clock in Monrovia. Good morning. The line, the mic is open. Let's hear you.
Thank you, Ledger. We're glad to be here.
Since the new year, since the new year.
Yeah.
John.
It's a great new year, good beginning.
Yeah, good beginning. John Kollie and the Findel, and the Findel saga. Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, Frank, I think I've just seen you since the new year too, also.
Oh well, yes.
Yeah.
We've talked with.
I just hear the voice and firing for all cylinders.
no, we continue to remain like
Public Trust Media Group.
Yeah.
The team moving, man. I contribute there.
Well, gentlemen, good morning to all of you, and thanks for taking time off your busy schedule. I thought it was important for us as media people, media professionals, to sort of do a rating, if you will, or an introspection analysis of the CDC-led government after 1 year of stewardship of the country. I know we've had so many analyses from different sectors of society. The international press have done theirs. Sometimes when we look back at some of the things that are rating by our own country, we may not be satisfied, but it's from their own lens, from their lenses, so we can question it. But let's do it from our own viewpoint, and being here and being actively involved in all of it. Let's do it from our own viewpoint. So let's start this morning with the issue of governance. President Weah took the oath of office on the 22nd of January last year, and in that inaugural address, he promised Liberians that Liberians will no longer be spectators in the running of their own government and in the economy of their country. Let's look at the issue of governance first. And when we're talking about governance, we're talking first about the formation of the national mosaic in terms of the executive. What would you say has been the quality and the kind of people that he's brought on board to help him achieve his agenda?
Well, I think since you mentioned that, going back to the State of the Nation address, or before that, the inaugural address on 22nd, President Weah pledged his determination of the CDC government to uphold the rule of law and promote good governance in general. But I don't want to put a figure to it in terms of rating 80% this, that. But on the overall, governance was completely unimpressive. Let's look at the respect for the rule of law and the Constitution. We saw from the very onset actions by the CDC government that they were not actually prepared to implement the rule of law to the fullest. Beginning with the Code of Conduct. Part 10.1 of the Code of Conduct states emphatically that officials, elected officials, appointed officials, must declare their assets prior to taking office. And then we saw the Weah government reneging on that, only under pressure for the president to, on the 25th, I think, of July last year, to announce through the General Auditing Commission that he had submitted, and that was 6 months late. Besides his officials, the bulk of them, up to date, have failed to do that. So that was a flagrant violation of the law. The Code of Conduct was enacted into law as part of the
but did the Code of Conduct say, Frank, at specific times for
the Minister of Information was in Fabric Studio when the Fabric I pointed out that, and they announced it. They talk about those who are continuing in office, those who are just joining government. President Weah went from one position of senator to the position of president. It stated that from A to E. So that was a flagrant violation. Then you look at the latest thing with the appointment or commissioning of Ambassador Patton to the U.S. People tend to take the Constitution for granted. these violations, breaches of the constitutions, send the wrong signal. The law is the law. You saw the appointment of former Representative Yinka to the laity, which flatly violated the provisions, the article setting, the act setting of laity, because they had what they call the multi-stakeholder group, MSG. Without regard to that, even in terms of hiring of the head of the secretariat, the president went on and did it, and there's no amendment or amends. Now, in Nigeria, just a few days ago, as we speak, a judge on the Nigerian High Court, Chief Justice, is being prosecuted through the court for not declaring her assets upon taking office. And we say Nigeria is 419, but even the least countries try to respect the rule of law. So, on the overall, I think this government has failed in terms of governance.
John, or Akina, anyone?
Before that, you talk about composition of the government. You know, for me, I don't have many degrees, but the one I have, I trust it, I can defend it. There have been criticisms about the quality of some of the people appointed into government. That is a concern. If you look at the position of, I cited specifically of Assistant Minister of Agriculture for Research and Extension. There were a group of experts, people from the private and public sector, who said that position is the nerve center of the agriculture ministry. Unfortunately, with all those arguments, those in that department of extension are scientists. Some of them have 2 masters. You saw how the appointment went. And again, you know, from time immemorial, it hasn't been the executive alone. The Constitution says in Article 54 that the president should nominate and then pass it over to the Senate for their consent and confirmation. But you have a situation where increasingly the legislature and the executive have been conniving to break down our democracy, because the president submitted those names. It was the duty of the Senate to exercise due diligence. Almost 100% of everybody went through. You saw the situation with the Deputy Minister of Finance, with little or no experience running a church group. You know how the finances in church group go. You know,
it was a cashier.
Yeah, cashier in a church.
Maybe the mommy
for administration, and that was clear. You know, we need to be frank, because one thing I notice about this country, if you find yourself in a position where you're benefiting from the spoils of the system, is not wrong. And this is dangerous for our democracy.
No, but just before John comes in, I have great respect for historical antecedents. 72 hours ago, the government marked 1 year in office. Let us reflect on the fact that January 22nd, 2018, we saw the newness of a group of people who for a period of time have been particularly in a militant and advocacy disposition. That transition from being the militants, from being the firebrand, to inheriting the governance process that has been on for a little over 12 years. One can imagine the anxiety, one can imagine the overzealousness of the new brand of Liberians who have come to the center stage to assume the mantle of leadership of our country. Let us not forget that government is a human institution. While it is true that they may not have the qualification, and for that matter, nobody or no group of people have had previous qualification in the running of government, and the records are there. And so in the newness of this new group of Liberians, I think it is only fair, why it is true that in the likes of the minds of militant journalists,
No, I reject that.
we hold their feet. We hold their feet to the fire, and that is the beauty of our democracy.
Yeah.
It is also important that first period, when small rate come, after the small rate, people will improve. But I think in the governance process, while we disagree with some of the missteps, equally so, let us accept the fact that that newness will gradually fade away, and people will begin to come to grips with how and what it takes to run and operate in the system of the governance process as we see it.
John?
Well, I'll stay in the middle here. Whilst I agree with Frank and agree with Elkana here, I would say, for example, the Ministry of Agriculture that he refers to, he's 100% right on that. This is a guy who was expelled from our university, if I'm correct. If that's the situation and we want to run a government in this country, we got to respect the system of the country. The University of Liberia is a macrocosm of our knowledge building. And if it has a fundamental problem with a student, it has to be settled. I think to appoint such a man was a slap in the face of our education system, and in itself showed disrespect to the system that we run. And to that extent, the pool of people that were required for this job, this is a technical job, to let all of them down and choose a man who was defiant in the face of the university, I would think is a challenge to the very system we want to lead and are leading now. To that extent, I would think that failure generally, as used by Frank, is too strong a word for who I will call a group of people on learning curves here. And it kind of put it right that these are new guys on the block. Militancy in politics is not generally leadership in the country. And so when people take over, even the best, President Seliv, who came from the governing school of Harvard and the likes, told you that she had time and wanted time to learn. So it's very important to give people time to learn. I think that they have had some good. It's not bad starting. It's tough starting. They are making errors along the way, which they can correct in year 2 and in grade 1. Grade 2, is it correct? Mm. So, rule of law, I think, again, this is a big learning curve. I was wondering why did President George Weah run to appoint him Patton? You call him Patton? Is that his name? Yeah. As ambassador to the US or UN without confirmation. This is almost a known thing. So I was wondering, why are we in a rush? He could have waited. Maybe Donald Trump was standing by to receive him, so it was urgent to do. But I think this was a complete downplay of the law, big part of our constitution. And an ambassador to another country is such a big job. It's like a presidency of the country, a representation of our nation. So we should have gone through that the right way. So I disagree with the government on this, and we want President Weah to stay on the track of the rule of law. But I will want to disagree with Frank that it was generally a failure of the system, if you will.
I mean, if you look at in terms of appointment, I come back to it. If you look at the number of appointments the president had to make, right, almost close to 1,000 plus. Yeah. And you flag about 3 or 4.
And that's why I agree with Frank on this one.
Yeah. So yes, three or 4.
I like the fact that Frank pointed to the errors in this thing, so that we don't make them again. The president has to consult his legal team more. Henceforth, when I do this, again, Mr. President, the reason you got all these people working is because you don't know it all. You don't even know 10% of it. governance is such a difficult thing. But it's good to keep consulting. And let's blame people like Bezonga Finley, who should tell the president, yes, Mr. President, this is not the way it goes, especially he being a former member of the legislature at the senatorial level. He should have told the president this is not the way to go. But we should blame him in some way.
But if we look at these, you know, I like to call them faux pas,
right?
That Frank pointed out, and juxtapose them across the general picture of the government in terms of governance. Is failure justifiable?
No, I don't think so.
You know,
but partially, yes.
But you know,
let's call this.
No, I agree. Look, Frank, what you outline.
Remember,
you see, even the issue of with the issue of the appointment of the late executive director and the issue of the declaration of the president's assets.
Right.
There was always a debate as to when, because according
that
the debate was being had.
Ledger and Frank, you know that code of conduct thing. We as a country started disrespecting that thing right from the start. Even in the election, we took it not seriously. We put it aside and just went ahead. So it is a temptation when leaders take over to say, look, like this thing is nothing. So let's do our own thing. So it's not just them, but it's a whole governance system that disrespected it right from the start. You know that we put it aside to run the election? This was bad. And we should stop it. President, we and the team should, if they believe we should have a code of conduct, should respect it. And I agree with Frank on this one, that to flout it as we're doing is wrong. Our country has got to get on the track of respecting code of conduct, because it guides us to good governance.
The point I'm making and stressing, you have compartmentalized the discussion. We got other things like infrastructure. I'm saying the failure has been in governance. Look,
and do you mean generally? Do you mean generally?
Generally,
and that's where we disagree.
That would be
because you see the point we must make here is that President Weah took over on January 22nd, promising to uphold the rule of law. But the Constitution is an organic law of the country. We've had perennial situations in this country where people have flouted the Constitution, which is the organic law of the country. And what's the consequences for violating the Constitution? That's the point. But I gave reference to Nigeria.
Will that not always be? And there have been scenarios in Nigeria where they have flouted some parts of their constitutional obligations.
So
that would not generally cast a doubt on what they do in the country. That's my point.
No,
so we should not generalize it to say because an appointment was made of pattern, that means we've generally abused the Constitution. We are saying correct this error.
No, but it's not
move on.
It's not one.
Okay, let's move on. Our points. The points are made.
Laws of the country.
The points are made. I mean, but let's stay with the issue of governance. Let's look at the interrelationship between the branches themselves. We've seen over the years how, you know, the legislative at one point in time will be at loggerheads with the executive, and then the executive at one point in time at loggerheads with the judiciary here and there, and all these kinds of things. What are your take on the relationship?
I think reading this, it looks like George Weah and his team are playing the game. They are managing to hold together. It looks more. I see a difference from the struggle in the Ellen time when they had to remove Snow, accusing President Sirleaf. It came down to Tyler and somebody else in the Senate, and on and on. There's a difference here. There was one little upheaval that would have happened not too long ago when there was an attempt to remove Buffer Chambers, and it looks like the president sort of played a role here to try to mend defenses for peace. So I think there's if you will, a better coordination, it appears, but there's a lot of accusations about Buffer Chambers and his team, and they accuse him of misrule in the legislature. That is something to look into.
I think the ability of the president to form a marriage with the first branch of government in a way and manner, or as it were, a form, has not being marred by hiccups, clearly suggests a semblance of leadership. And that is good for our democracy. Critics
check and balance.
That is correct. But critics will resort to names calling. But I think the better the relationship between the executive and the legislature, the better for our country, because quite a number of things will not be stopped.
To what extent does that relationship,
it can hamper some good
because
governance.
remember there is a constitutional requirement for check and balances.
Right. That is correct.
Right.
And the folks on Capitol Hill are acutely aware of their responsibility in terms of oversight. And of course, they've been playing that role.
I don't like the word marriage as used by you.
Choice of words.
Too much of a very rosy marriage would be dangerous for democracy. What I look at more is the fact that conflict can be managed. To that extent, then it's good for democracy. A very rosy marriage would be dangerous because it will have the legislature become rubber stamp, and that is not good for the country.
But that's why I hinted names calling. What John is suggesting is a resort to rapprochement.
But you should call names here. This system is not run by nameless people.
I think the relationships so far have been stable to a large extent, but there's a need for more coordination, and there's a need for more check and balances. I think the Vice President Joel Taylor mentioned that when the Senate delegation visited her, and even the President spoke about that when he attended the opening of the 54th legislature. That is very important. But let me tell you what. The Constitution calls for independent, separate, coordinate. So you can be in a marriage that will not, that will ignore
that takes away the
checks and balances. Look, actually, if you look at the political landscape in this country, from time immemorial, we saw that exhibited during the Ellen Sirleaf government of Unity Party for 12 years. You made reference to the removal of snow. We have a situation where we need more independent, forward-thinking lawmakers who will stand up for what is in the interest of the public, the people, and not a political party or their selfish vehicle or other thing. What we've seen happening, leaderships that have been bought over by the executive, who are in bed with the executive, collaborate, connive to push the selfish interests. Even that's why we saw that coming up in the out of 66 concession agreement, only 68, only 2 met the standards from the Moe Stevens investigation. Who passed those very laws, those acts? Who ratified those concessions? But the very concessions. And we see that creeping into this particular situation. So this is why you see some lawmakers are beginning to stand up. Because if we let it drift in this direction, you will find everything that will go through, that will sail through that legislature will pass. The oversight will be weak, and then our democracy will be affected. So it's very important that
still talking about that be stressed. Still talking about that relationship. The legislature, the lawmakers, and the interpreters of the law, the judiciary, were on good standing. The issue of the cabinet of Justice John.
There's an attempt to ward off my vocab, marriage. But when people talk about relationship here, when people employ other narrative, or as it were verbiage, to say precisely what we said initially, we come back to the same point. In a marriage, it is a matter of a relationship.
In politics, I don't think marriage is a good terminology. Coordination, cooperation, coordination, cooperation, collaboration. Those are the words that are usually used.
It is a unit. The government is a unit.
They already married. Don't use it again.
And now let me point to the
Trinity marriage.
Let me point to the judiciary. I think the issue of the attempt to impeach Justice Kabena Janet came into the fray. We have a situation now, that's why I'm saying, in order for our democracy to be strong, the individual officials that find themselves or who find themselves in those positions must be men and women with guts. You have a situation where some lawmakers, especially those on the CDC side, were trying to use, and they will still try to do that, to intimidate members of the Supreme Court bench, threaten them, intimidate them with impeachment. And if they are not strong, if I'm telling you the fact, if they are not strong, if they're only holding on to their position and not looking at the interests of the public,
you tell her the fact.
I'm telling you what has been coming up in the corridors.
Frank again, you're going deep here.
If they are not strong, I'm saying this with seriousness, they will be intimidated by some lawmakers about not being impeached or being impeached, and they will not be independent. They will not see the law as it should be interpreted.
Here is how I see it. Here is how I see it. Impeachment is part of democracy.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, it is. And I have not heard the judiciary say there is an interference with their work on this. They see a procedure that is working, and some of them are opposing it. Chief Justice is agreeing to work along as long as the procedure is right. Accusations, government people can deny that this is not a witch hunt, as it were. And there is a barrage of accusations against Associate Justice Jana here, and he has also entered the process. You see the point? So we have to be careful here with our choice of words, that somebody is trying to witch hunt somebody. Justice Jana has entered the process of the impeachment proceedings. He has not said he's not going that way. If he does, he will decline and leave it for the people to remove him the way they like. But he's entered the process, and the procedure is ongoing. I would not want to verge on that to mean that this is a relationship problem. I don't see it that way. I see a struggle to impeach one of the justices, and the process is ongoing. I have seen generally a semblance of coordination, but politics is playing. Politics can be largely individual, and it's playing here. Lobbies are going on in the legislature. There are fights among men and women in government. Is normal, but as I see it, the Justice Janet thing is not as witch hunting as we imagine. All right, I think it's a struggle of the titans. Somebody somewhere, and it's normal in politics. It's then up to the governance structure to resist it. It's up to Justice Janet to say, look, I think this is totally wrong. You remove me. I'm not entering the process. Until he does that, I see this as part of the democracy that is rolling in the country.
Let's move away from the government. Let's move away from governance to the economy. There's always a big debate about what did the government inherit from the former government, President Salif's administration, and what is happening now. How do we look at 1 year down the line? Has much been done to sort of keep this economy up and running?
Let me let Frank go.
Well,
let's get the case from Frank.
The economy. Let's be frank.
Yeah.
Let me look at what President Weah promised in his inaugural address, that he will not let Liberian business people be spectators. I think there has been a good move with this 3 million, I think 3 point some more million made available for loan to Liberian businessmen through the LBDI. I think it's a good move. But again, how will this money be managed is something that we need to watch. Who will be recipient of these loans? Will it be some of the same officials as was done with the old central bank loan when they gave loan to lawmakers and were intended to go to those
to
small market people? And then I still see a policy, a willingness to do this. But again, are we making some of the initial giant radical steps to intervene on behalf of Liberian businesses? For the last year or so, we had this problem coming from the previous regime where foreign business people are both retailers and wholesalers. That has not stopped.
It's a problem.
Little or no efforts have been made to reverse that trend in terms of radical actions, and everything here to protect it. The Liberian business law, 25 or 26 businesses are strictly restricted to Liberian businesses. Ice cream making, ice making, all those things. What kind of concrete efforts have been made? Now, I hate to use this cliche. When the Christmas is good, you will see it from the Eve.
Well, you just use it.
Sometimes the Eve can be pretentious.
Yeah, but are there real concrete signal steps being made towards this end? So, for example, the $3 million or more being put forward, I think, is a laudable effort. But again, how will this be managed? Will it be managed that the $25 million used to map up the money market with the foreign exchange? You see, the government has not been clear, they have not been transparent on this. And there was a report from a New York-based outlet talking about concerns being expressed by the Treasury about the possibility of some of this $25 million going into the hand of terrorist financiers, money launderers, Hezbollah. It was published on the 12th of July. Now, the Minister of Finance...
Who's expressing concern?
The Treasury.
Which
Department? The U.S. Treasury.
U.S. Treasury?
Yeah, that was the report. It's published from New York. And we saw how this thing was not done transparently. The Minister of Finance and others say they went and dish out money to money.
I agree with you on this. And I agree with you on this one. That the way we manage.
I don't believe that the Minister of Finance, because I know they did give a report to the Senate on this financing issue, and
the very lawmakers are also in the dark. They're complaining, they're concerned, they want to know how this thing was being managed.
But the Senate was giving a full report. I know it for a fact, and Deputy Minister for Fiscal Affairs was sitting right here and did a full report here also too, reading from that report that they gave to the Senate. And I think even the Minister of Finance himself, sitting on the national radio, explained how that money was in fact, it's even 15 million that has been spent to date.
They say 15 out of the 25
has been spent to date, but people are still saying 25 million. Up until October, up to October, there was only 15 million cents.
Where is the report?
The report is public. It is to the Senate. It was given to the Senate. But I scared, one of the things.
And then there are lawmakers. No, even.
Look, Frank. One of the things I know as I do. You want to hire anything for Liberian? Put in a pamphlet. Put in the pamphlet. People don't read.
The press doesn't.
So why don't we go after?
Go after the report. Just go after the report. Find out for the finance ministry.
Here's my thought about the whole thing.
But I know they did. I mean, they've been back and forth explaining how this money was spent. I know the politics of aid. You hear from the opposition, they went to Nukuta and West Point and get money out. Which is
exactly what the politics said.
No. The minister said clearly that as far as I know, and he's here, and I can find that recording one day or the other.
The first statement from the finance ministry, they didn't say that they went into because they didn't want to use the banking system. So they went into the nook and corners, those communities, and gave. But that's what they said. President Weah's statement before that $5 million mop up money was made, he said, and one of the reasons responsible for the liquidity problem, the foreign exchange problem, was that the bulk of the money was now in the banking system. So why didn't the government not channel that $25 million through the banking system.
If the money is not in the banks, and I'm not an economist, they've explained that there are two ways in which you can map out excess liquidity from the market. You can go through the normal orthodox way, and you can, and then you can also use what they call an exogenous way of doing it. What they did this time was to go to the licensed forex bureaus.
But still, they're not the banks. The forex bureau.
It is not. It is not. It is not.
Mind you, most of that kind of business is considered as a parallel market.
Frank,
what's the rule of the game? That's why
so you're saying to you, it's not right. It's not wrong economically.
It's not the bank that you go to.
It's not one of the banks that you go to. That's the point they're making.
But here's the point I gotta make about the economy. This is a problem with us Liberians and with the government. I think that, and I don't know if President, it's about, not just about announcing 5 million, 10 million here. We have to believe in ourselves on both sides. So contracts that are issued, how many of these, what percentage do we give to Liberians? Right? So road construction, fuel, complex constructions, all kinds of work, labor work in the country. How are we doing that? The other question I want to ask, how committed are we Liberians to implement what's giving us for our own country? We are experienced to this. We Liberians don't seem to.
Who are those contractors that are now doing these community roads?
I hear some Liberians are involved. I hear criticism of President Weah himself not giving some of his own home construction work to Liberians. If that's true, he too needs to stop that and work with Liberians. But the other side is Liberians need to be sincere. We take money and don't use money. We steal people's cement. We steal steel rod. Look, we are living witnesses to this.
No, John is very right. It's even started with the money sides, for youth. Youth businesses. The Minister of Youth and Sports, Zioga Wilson, commented on it, I think just yesterday, that money has been given out in terms of loans under this program to youths, and the young people reneging on paying back.
That's us.
And guess what? Somebody wrote on Fabric this morning, the news, after they carried the story. They said, yeah, the youth are doing it because our officials are also taking money and not playing with
so we who now,
so
and this is my argument with people. We who say government is corrupt, how can we do the same thing? Where are we going? You have, in this country, to the lowest level, our young people don't even want to work. We complain nothing here. We don't have vocational training centers and blah, 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 blah. Guinea Pele boys come from across the bridge. And they are the ones working for us today. These people have never been to vocational schools. They end up in these garages and apprenticeship with other people and learn well. What are we up to? But the economy can never be improved without all these small work by us.
This is my,
and others are taking it away.
This is my take on the economy. We are no strangers to the fact that iron ore is not doing well, rubber is not doing well.
Yeah, export earnings.
We're trying to add value to the issue of cocoa, encouraging our farmers here and there. But by and large, we've all resolved in the last couple of years up to this point that the only way we can make that big fundamental shift in improving our economic livelihood is to go agro-based. To what extent is that commitment forthcoming is totally another thing. But I think, like John said, we should stop this tendency of not demonstrating trust, but we on the other hand want to insist that other people be trustworthy.
Exactly.
That is totally unfair. For me, the issue of the 25 million, whatever the billions, given the antics and the intrigues, I will not go there because we are waiting for a report. That's the way I intend to go. But we should not forget, we are hearing news about Sam Darby. Why? Because we have a problem in this country. We think it is our people who are harassing these concessionaires, but no, they are political honor tools manipulated by political actors, and in the end, there's this fighting in this particular plantation here and there, and why it's not healthy. It is not healthy because when these people pull out, the same people will come to Capitol Building to work, but the people in the villages and town will not have a livelihood. So who in effect is thwarting the economy?
We
the government, we ourselves, precisely. We ourselves. So
I just wanted to flag this as we talk about the economy, because it's important. This is quality and scientific from the African Development Bank, Liberia's macroeconomic performance. Real GDP growth rebounded to an estimated 3.2% in 2018 from 2.5%. That's progress. In 2017, driven mainly by mining, and agriculture, forestry, and fishing dominated the economy, contributing 70.3% of the GDP in 2017. A moderate increase in revenues combined with a decrease in spending reduced the fiscal deficit to 3.9% in 2018 from 7.9% of GDP in 2017. Liberia remains at a moderate risk of debt distress. Total public debt was 41.3% of GDP in 2017, about 69.6% of which, or 29% of the GDP, was external. The Liberian dollar depreciated by 24.5% against the US dollars in 2017 and by 27% by the end of 2018 June. The depreciation was caused by deteriorating terms of trade and high demand for foreign exchange for imports. Nevertheless, inflation was an estimated 11.7% in 2018, slightly lower than in 2017, due partly to high dollarization, about 70% of abroad money. The current account deficit improved marginally to 22.4% in 2018 from 22.7% in 2017 as exports increased due to gold production and a modest recovery of commodity prices. Gross foreign reserves increased slightly from 3.0 months of imports in 2017 to 3.6 months at the end of June 2018. So the economy did shift a bit, but there's still more needs to be done.
And I think a key word
or so growth rate for this 2019. But you have to look at the trickle-down effect on the lives of the people. Whether this growth will be reflected in which area. As you pass the streets, you see a group of young men digging, using their labor. Some time ago, the Minister of Agriculture, they're digging those different holes for pipeline and other things and the cable and what have you. We have labor in this country.
That's low-hanging fruit, and it's going to use to the economy. Yeah.
The Minister of Agriculture some time ago complained about low budget for agriculture.
The Youth and Sports Ministry just signed a $10 million for youth empowerment.
Right. There's the same money they're giving to youth they don't want to pay back, for example. Now, you see, this growth rate can be 3.7%, but you look at the trickle-down effect.
So the trickle-down effect, should be respected by us.
Right.
You just mentioned John, labor.
The point
people not respect it.
The point I'm making. How much are we investing in agriculture, for example? Mind you, agriculture can take this economy up in the absence of iron ore and diamond. So if the level of investment in this sector is low, you will have thousands of youth still idle.
Frank,
if we invest in agriculture, this is my point, because a few months ago we saw people heralding bringing in 80,000 bags of rice here,
Frank.
It's not the one that will support, that will help, that will employ people.
I agree with you, but
we should be rejoicing by establishing convenient farms.
Hello, Frank. Hello. Again, we need
Frank, the counter argument could be
we're going around the cycle, and my cycle is this.
Okay.
All that we say that we need to invest here, we need to invest this, we can invest as much. If the Liberian labor is not willing, it's a useless.
So people are willing. Those who are digging those trenches here, the Chinese people, they need to work. They're willing to work. But what kind of farm have you established to take thousands from Monrovia there? Pay them something good, give them sleeping place. We haven't tried it.
Frank, it's not a role of the government to create farms. It's not in a capitalist economy. Governments don't do that. It's for direct foreign investment, environment.
Let's take
for these kinds of investments to be made in agriculture.
Instead of
that is why you see
what I'm saying, Ledge. Instead, because we seem to be going in this vicious cycle. Instead of investing in bringing 80,000 bags of rice and heralding it, we should have taken that money to invest in planting rice.
Do you know what is happening currently between the farmers and the government?
Frank,
do you know what is happening between the farmers and the government?
In terms of what?
Ekena.
There's a lot taking place between the farmers and the government.
Frank,
in terms of
skills training, provision.
I don't think
that you train the people and they have nowhere to
want to reduce this discussion to
apply the knowledge. That's why I'm saying we have to be practical.
Frank, we're trying to propose things here for the improvement, not just to argue. Frank, our problem in this country, I'm an investor myself. I'm into all kinds of stuff in this country. I know what I'm going through. You take your money, you put it in your own people's hand, your materials, they sell all. Most of our young people are on motorbikes. Who's going to make the farm? Think about it. This is
John, you have a point.
No, let's call a spade a spade.
Are we making a deliberate effort to do that, to change that paradigm?
For example, I'm making an individual effort. We're not getting
an investment of $3 million, and now there's an additional $2 million from the World Bank to match up the government seed funding. For me, it's a demonstrable first step to driving the economy.
With the farmer.
Let's get this argument above our level and put it down. My brother, we need to work on how we deal with this motorbike riding. It's a big problem. It's a fast money making thing with a dangerous future that we're not looking at. All our young people, all they want to do ride the bikes, have some fun, drink alcohol, have sex. That's it. 10 years down the road. And not one of them will not easily forego.
Maybe in year 2, when there are more investments in agriculture, we can get more and more young people. And
we need to discourage how we discourage that.
But John, it's a critical mass of people that are riding the bicycle that have seen it as a livelihood.
But
because over time, yes,
we need to work against that.
With the creation of low-hanging fruits, with the creation of more low-hanging fruits jobs. Like Frank is arguing, and
that is not John's argument. I agree with John.
With more having jobs, it could drive the young people.
I become a parent, and
there needs to be a policy. And I discussed it with Carlos Gray before the election. When I saw them headed down the road of winning this election in Banga, if you listen to Akaros, I'm putting it to you again. We need to strategize on how to get these boys out of the bikes.
Where do you go? Where do you take them when they get away from the bike?
Something we can't say here because they will resist it. We need to say it to the people who are in authority to do it. There's a way to transition without hurting them.
Okay.
You see what's going on with the tricycle? Is one step away from the motorbikes. Cleverly, you can divert people gradually. Let me tell you what tricycle does. It stops the street violence that they've been used to. Because they're able to move faster with the motorbike, they can cause trouble and move and cause trouble. Tricycle cannot do that. For example,
John, we spend a lot of time on the economy. Time is not on our side.
But that's something to really touch the leaders with, and we will be discussing these.
Let's look
Frank is right. Create the job, but Frank also encourage our young people to get into it. Because other people will come and reap this benefit and take the money back.
Let's look at the international relations aspect of our government. The credentialing of a lot of ambassadors.
And that's why, George, we have made that mistake with Pat. Maybe your man Trump was waiting for. And I was joking about that.
Does it say that the government is being recognized and welcomed into the fold?
Yeah,
President made several trips, addressed the UN.
I think
it sounded odd a bit to me when people were overstating the presentation of credentials. Mind you, the government of former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf broke the ice by bringing back Liberia into the international system. So, those credentials that have been presented, is it a recognition of the government, or is it normal diplomatic flow?
What do you think?
Ambassadors turn you in, and then an ambassador present a credential, a letter of credence. So, you know, it makes it look like but everybody seems to be saying that the government is recognized.
Frank is the egg. Frank, if you look at it this way, if you look at it that way, then it's the theory of the egg, of the yolk and the white of the egg. You cannot divorce one from the other.
No,
and I think
but those countries are not threatening to break diplomatic relations with Liberia.
But if they weren't happy with the CDC-led government, they wouldn't be re-credentialing their ambassador.
No,
to deal with this,
it's normal diplomatic channel. The diplomat turn you ends, and then another letter of credence is presented. But
Frank, this is where
Liberia was in a state of isolation before. Now,
no.
This is where it comes from. It has a background.
Yeah.
That struggle about, you know, the CDC people saying that they have been recognized, and the opposition saying it comes from the feeling that they claim the opposition said their man would not be internationally recognized.
Yeah, that was a campaign. That was a campaign.
Acting out of that, and now you said the people will not work with us. Here they are coming now. That means they recognize us.
But
so they are getting carried away. No, that's not the point. You did not get it.
You know.
Frank, you did not get it. They are reacting to what the opposition is saying about them. So they are carried away by the criticism of the opposition rather than the reality.
Diplomatically, they should not be doing that because they are the standing government.
I am in line with you.
In the political season.
I'm in line with you on that. But they are trying to play the game and respond to their opposition people, which is not what they should be doing. And the fact is that people are simply presenting credentials here, and I don't think the internationals have gone away from Liberia.
But we've seen dailies here, dailies.
Yeah.
We've seen dailies that have every day doomsday about Liberia. Oh, more and more companies leaving tomorrow. More and more diplomatic missions are leaving. The Americans are not giving this government money and blah 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 blah. So when these people come, what do you expect the man will say? Even one white man probably for them will say, "Yeah, the white man came for me."
And then what going on?
You see? So you can't blame them, Frank. When they are reacting, I think it is a regular thing. But at the end of the day, when you
hype is not necessary.
Yeah, but when you begin down to write and tell the public that hey, this government is not being recognized, so they will play on everything. In fact, somebody told me the other day that this picture about President Trump and Ambassador Patton was Photoshop. So they say, yeah, it's Photoshop. I said, but a big country like America, if their president is being portrayed in a Photoshop,
they will say that. They
will say it's not true.
And then not just that, but the President Trump made a statement. The embassy here will say, no, our president did not say that.
Remember the Moma Molu versus Obama situation, right?
Yeah, Moma Molu.
I was in England at that time studying, and there was a big debate as to whether Moma Molu met President Trump President Obama at the time. But the embassy took time and they issued a statement debunking that no, he didn't meet the man.
He didn't meet. And they would do the same.
And they would do the same. So,
but anyway, these are the kind of, if you will, you expect this kind of row continuously in politics over achievements and non-achievement. Remember, people are also trying to take over later, and they're in a fight.
Yeah.
We are on the side.